If you're able to notice these things, then you are a great engineer. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hello, and welcome back. If you've gotten through the intense coding section where we learned about data structures and algorithms, well, good job. The good news is that the hard part is over. The bad news is that, well, you're not going to get any job you want because coding is just part of a job interview. And as you know, you have the technical side and also the non-technical questions. And depending on who you are, you might find one easier than the other. And when we say non-technical questions, those are the questions asked in an interview by the interviewer to see whether they want to work with you, whether you'd be a good fit in the company, and to make sure that you're not only just good at coding, because you have to be good at working well with others. In this section, we're going to tackle this problem. How do we succeed in a non-technical interview when we get asked what we call behavioral questions? Let's have a look at what we're going to talk about. In this section, we're going to talk about what we're going to do during the interview. And we're going to create an overall strategy so that we're as successful as possible, just like we did with the technical part. We're going to talk about specific questions and how to answer them. And the good news is that most of these questions are the same. They may sound different at different companies and they might tweak it a little bit, but the overall answers are pretty much the same. So once you've gone through a couple of them, it actually becomes easier and easier. And all these questions can just be given with the same answer. So all your non-technical interviews pretty much sound the same. So let's just perfect that. We're going to talk about how to answer questions like, tell me about a problem you solved. Why do you want to work for us? What kind of questions do you ask the interviewer at the end of the interview? The question that we always get asked at the beginning of the interview, which is, tell me about yourself. How do we answer that? What is our biggest weakness? And then we're also going to talk about what to do after the interview to maximize our success, and also a little fun secret weapon section, where I'm going to talk about some of the things that we can use to impress the interviewer. It's going to be a fun section. We're going to take a break from coding. So if your brain is a bit of a mush after the coding section, well, you can just take it easy, sit on the couch, press play, and hopefully I don't bore you too much. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Welcome back. Let's get into this section. And the very first thing I want to talk about is mindset. You see, the biggest mistake that we make going into an interview is that, well, thinking that this is your only chance. The way you walk into an interview is to walk in knowing that you have many other opportunities. This is just one of them. It's not do or die. It's not pass or fail. If this interview goes wrong and you don't get the job, your life isn't over. So first and foremost, treat everything as a learning experience. And what I mean by that is you go into the interview, whether it's a phone interview or an on-site interview, not expecting a job, not hoping for a job. Don't hope for anything at all. Just go to learn, to see where your weaknesses are, to learn about a company, and as with anything, as if you're running code, to check how good your code is. You just want to see how good you are at interviews. So that's the key. This is not your only chance. And if you go into that already, you're going to be less nervous. You're going to be more comfortable. It's going to help you out a lot. I know it's silly. I know it's one of those things that we all know, but really do that. Don't go into an interview nervous and thinking that, you know what, if I don't get this, then I'm not good enough. No, this is just another practice, another day at the office, you just trying to get to where you want to be next. Now, what about when you actually go into the interview for the first time? And this is where interviewing is very similar to dating. Your interviewer is more likely to be excited about interviewing you if you're excited as well. Because sometimes interviewers are people from human resources that do this every single day, or it could be other coders that are just taking time out of their day to interview you. So you want to make this exciting and fun for them. It's not all about you, it's also about them as well. And they want to see if they want to work with you. This is a little trick that it sounds silly, but it really, really does work. Your goal is to enter the room with a lot of energy, being happy, excited to be there. And this is a classic psychological technique where humans, when we interact with each other, we match each other's energy and energy level. So if you're excited, if you're walking in there with a big smile, ready to get the interview going, it's also going to jolt the interviewer to say, all right, let's do this, let's have fun, instead of just going there nervous and scary, because the interviewer is going to match your energy. So this is the trick. Before you open that door, say to yourself, I'm about to go meet a really good friend, like you've known them for years. And by acting like that, you're going to make the interviewer like you more. Again, it sounds silly, but it is a proven psychological technique. Not only that, but excitement is a signal that you actually want this job. So again, you're walking in, about to meet a best friend, and you're trying to make the interviewer's day, not bore them to death. And an interviewer wants to ask or answer 3 questions during this interview. The first one we know. Can you do the job? Do you have the coding skills necessary? Do you actually have the skills necessary? But this isn't the only question. You also have, well, can I work with you? Is this the type of person that I want to be coworkers with? Are they going to be fun to be around? And this is a very important question that gets answered during these non-technical questions. And then the third one is, are you going to improve? Because most of the times when you get hired as a developer, you're not going to be a 100% perfect match for them. On your first day, on your first week, the first month, you're learning on the job and learning their ways, how their code bases work, how their best practices works, and you're constantly improving. And they're looking for people that can adapt quickly and learn, and a year from now, become a really valuable asset. The first question, can you do the job? We're prepared for that because we just finished the coding section. We know how to answer difficult technical questions. But these other 2, we haven't really talked about them. And again, that's what we're going to cover here. We're going to have the interviewer say yes to both of these last 2 questions. This is what we call behavioral question. Can I work with this person? Is this person going to be fun to work with? And are they the type of person that's constantly improving, that's going to become better and better? How do we do this? Well, for the rest of the section, I want you to keep in mind these 4 figures, what I call the 4 heroes. And I know it's silly, it's going to be a little cartoonish, but this way, hopefully you remember this. You see, before you enter the interview, you have to have somewhere between 2 to 4 stories prepared that I call the 4 heroes. And it has to demonstrate to the interviewer that you have these 4 hero qualities that they're looking for. The first one is technical. You want to have a story prepared about your past experience. Maybe you worked on a really difficult project or a personal project that is going to impress the interviewer. A story just for yourself that you know a lot about because you've worked on it, and something that shows the interviewer as soon as you tell the story that, oh, this person is really technical and knows their stuff. So that's when we build that 1 to 2 big project in our portfolio that we talked about at the beginning of the course. That's when this comes in. So you want to demonstrate that you're very technical and smart. That's the first hero. The second one, success. And this hero story shows you that you're a successful person. If you built something, what did you do? Did you maybe start a little app that turned out to be quite successful and it got a lot of users? Maybe at your past job, you got promoted to a senior level position. You want to have some sort of story that shows you that you're a successful person, not a person that never succeeds in any job. The next one is leadership. Are you the type of person that takes charge, doesn't get told what to do all the time, and can be left on their own? Do you have leadership qualities? And then the last one is challenge. And challenge is they want to hear a story of you going through some really challenging things, maybe a challenging technical problem that you had on a project and how you overcame it. Because you're a type of person that when presented with something that is really difficult, that has no clear solution, you can overcome it. When left alone, you can overcome any challenge. And these 4 stories are going to be specific to you. So I can't really give you a story to tell the interviewer. Look in your past experiences, and I guarantee you, no matter what level of experience you have, you'll have some stories from your past. It could be from work, it could be from projects, it could be from other things, where you're able to demonstrate these 4 heroes. The rest of this section, the answers we're going to give, what we're going to talk about, are all going to demonstrate these 4 heroes. We're not going to say to the interviewer, oh, I'm a very successful person because I did this. No, we're going to tell these stories that we have. Remember, 2 to 4 stories that demonstrate these hero values. And we're going to tell these stories, and the interviewer is going to get that we have these 4 qualities, these 4 heroes, just through the stories. And if you have these stories prepared before the interview, well, then you can always, depending on what question you get asked, you can always answer these questions with some sort of these stories that you have, because these stories are already prepared for you. This is where I say that all non-technical interviews sound the same, because you have these stories prepared and you just change them up a bit to answer the specific question. But deep down inside, you're just demonstrating these qualities. Remember, these qualities are the qualities that we have to answer the last 2 questions. And that is, can I work with this person? And are you going to improve? So let's get into it and answer some questions that we might get asked in an interview. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. A question that you're going to get asked at every interview that you do. Tell me about yourself. What should you say? And I'm going to leave this on the screen so you can just read it on your own. But this is something that should be already prepared and you're ready to answer and really nail it. How can we answer this question successfully? You see, this is the chance for you to steer the conversation in the direction that you want, in the prepared stories of the 4 heroes that you want. Remember, you're going to direct the rest of the conversation after they ask you this question to what you want them to ask you so you can shine. Some of the key takeaways here. You want to answer this question in about a minute. If you go too long into it, well, the interviewer is going to get bored. And if you go too short, then they don't get enough of a chance to get to know you. The key here is for you to tell your hero's journey. How you went from very little skill to somebody that they want to hire. Think of it like a movie. You want to talk about your triggers of success. Within this minute, you want to demonstrate that you're a successful person. You also want to slightly discuss maybe your past projects, your past companies, so that you get asked questions about these projects or past companies by the interviewer. Because keep in mind, the interviewer is going to ask follow-up questions based on this. And when you talk about yourself, maybe it's interesting that you were an origami master 5 years ago, but it might not matter to the interviewer. So make sure that your stories, your hero's journey is relevant to the job. And you mentioned some of the skills that you're going to be working with at this job. Within this minute, you want to demonstrate that they will be extremely lucky to have you and how everything you've done in the past makes this a perfect role for you. And keep in mind that an interviewer may not have even looked at your resume. So have a story prepared. Something difficult you did and what you did to solve that and what impact it had. You don't need to talk about your life story, how you went to elementary school, then high school. Just keep it short and to the point, but make sure you stand out from the crowd. Everybody might be able to code in JavaScript, but what did you do that makes you stand out? And that's something that you're going to have to answer on your own. Keep in mind that this type of question, there's different variations on it. Some people ask, walk me through your resume, or why are you leaving your current job, or many other variations. Essentially, they just want to hear the story of why you're here. And as an example, here's what I would say if, let's say, you have zero experience, that you just taught yourself to code and this is your first job interview. You can say something along the lines of, well, I got really interested in coding a couple of years back when I would start this small little side businesses, and I would hire developers and designers to build a website or an app for me. And it was always a black box where I would pay this developer money and they'll come back with a product that I was never fully satisfied for. So I started teaching myself how to code because I wanted to know how this black box works. And the more I learned, I became really interested, really engulfed in the programming landscape. And I just started consuming as much information as I can, practicing as much as I can. I started building projects. And then this is where you can talk about some of your big portfolio projects. And all of a sudden, I started writing blog posts about technical subjects that got received very well. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that through these projects and through these posts, every day I'm becoming better and better as a coder to the point that now I feel very confident in being able to be a valuable asset to your team, not just now, but even a year from now, where I expect my skills to exponentially grow. And this is just an example that I came up with at the top of my head, but you see here how I touched on all 3 points. Shows that I'm successful, that I've had past businesses in the past, how I've taught myself how to code because of an interest that I had. So I'm the type of person who's a go-getter. I also mentioned a few things I want to get asked, such as blog posts I've written, maybe projects I've worked on, my personal projects that I've put into my portfolio. And I also talked about skills relevant to the job. Maybe this was a position related to web development or building an app. And this is something you can tweak. But the key thing is to have this prepared. And remember, you want to stand out. Don't say things that all the other developers are saying or programmers are saying. If you did something amazing in your life, even if it isn't coding related, try to work it into the interview. And that way you'll be more memorable. And this is going to set the stage for the rest of the interview. So good luck out there. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. This is another question that gets asked a lot. Why us? Why do you want to work for us? Why did you choose our company? A question that gets asked every time. And any question that gets asked every time, you should be very prepared for it. This is where you shine. And you really have an answer that blows them out of the water. The key here is to make the interviewer feel special. Make them feel that this is your top choice and that this is where you see a long career for yourself. They don't want to hire somebody that's going to be there just for a year. They want somebody who really wants this job and is willing to dedicate years of their life growing with the company. So make them feel special. Make the interviewer feel that you really, really like this company. You admire this company. And also that you respect the fact that they work there. This is the classic question where you can give a very generic answer that everybody says and you won't stand out. And remember, interviewing is all about standing out, not doing what everybody else does. So a typical answer to a question like this, well, a really bad answer to a question like this will be something along the lines of, well, I just saw you guys on LinkedIn and I needed a job to make money. That is a terrible answer. So never say that. A better answer is something along the lines of, well, I've been researching your company for a while and I noticed that you're doing some work on X. And I myself have done some work in the past similar to this. And this is what I learned about it. And then you can go on with that. And then you can say something along the lines of, and I think the problem of X is really interesting. And I think it's something that I can add value to, but also learn and become better at. And again, this is just an example, but the idea here is that you're going to blow them out of the water. They expect you to give a generic answer, but instead, you talk about a specific problem. You talk about the fact that you did your research. Perhaps you talked to other developers on that company through LinkedIn, or you read one of their recent blog posts and you understand what kind of problems they're trying to solve. You answer this question by demonstrating that you have those skills. You mention some of the key words that they have in the job description, but also demonstrate that you're not like the rest that just wants a job and they're applying to a ton of companies. Tell them that you specifically searched companies and found this company interesting because of the type of work they do. It shows that you want to grow, and it also demonstrates that you'd be great for this job because you've worked with some of their problems in the past. And this might remind you of, yes, the 4 heroes. You talk about the technical aspects and how you worked on similar things that they're looking for. It shows that you're the type of person who's successful because, well, you're actually going out and researching and not just applying to companies blindly and waiting for any company to accept you. It also demonstrates leadership because you went out on your own and read their blog post, talked to their developers to make sure that you understand what the company's needs are. And then it also talks about challenge, how you worked on similar problems and you overcame them, or you think you can help out. And by this point, you should start to see a pattern. We're always trying to use the 4 heroes. We're always trying to stand out. And we're always trying to be the best version of ourselves to the interviewer. Now, before I end this video, I want to add a quick note here. And that is, part of the question might come with the follow-up question by the interviewer, which is, why did you leave your job? Why do you want to work for us? Why is your last job not good enough for you that you want to move? Everybody has different answers here. But the one thing that you want to be careful of is no negativity. They don't want to hear you complain about your coworkers, your boss, the ugly code base that your last company had. Be as positive as possible. Just say that you want to grow. You want more challenge. You want to work with people that are really smart, like they have this company. No negativity. Be as positive as possible and show how you just want to grow. You just want to learn from the best, work with the best, and you are the type of person that can be put in any situation to succeed. And at this moment, this company is your answer. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Welcome back. Let's talk about another question that gets asked a lot in interviews. Tell me about a problem that you had and how you overcame it, or how you solved it. Again, a very common question. How do you answer this? Well, we should know this by now. This should be prepared. We should be ready when they ask this question, or any variation of this type of question. Ideally, you have a big project from a past company that you worked with, or a personal project that you can answer this with. Again, going back to our portfolio and how we want to have 1 to 2 big projects, so we can answer questions like these and also impress the interviewer. Now, with these type of questions, we want to use something called the SAR method, S-A-R method. That is situation, action, and result. When asked this question, we start off with the situation. We tell the interviewer, this is how the project was. This is the problem that we had. This is the situation. The second part is the action. What did you do to solve that situation? I did this. I wrote a piece of software. What did you do? How did you try and solve And then the result is what happened after you took that action. The number of users increased. The performance of the website improved. So SAR, situation, action, result. This shows exactly what the problem is, what you did with the problem, and how you solved it. And you see over here, the second point, we want to have metrics and numbers. If you're able to give numbers to the interviewer, it sounds impressive. If I say, I improved the performance of a website, or I increased the number of users, that doesn't sound impressive, versus saying something like, the website performance improved by 50%, or we increased our monthly active users by 30%. Again, something that you can prepare ahead of time in your stories. This is why when I talked about the portfolios, we want to focus on big projects versus many small projects. Because when you get asked this question and your problem is that you had a difficult time building a to-do list app or a small little app, it's not going to sound impressive. That's what everybody else does. Instead, talk about a real problem. And that's something that we've built in past courses where we talked about difficult problems such as caching, scaling, performance, security. And these three over here, scaling, performance, security, are really, really good things to talk about. If you're able to use one of these, of how you improve security, how you improved performance, how you improved scaling, it's going to be really impressive because all companies have these problems and they want people that can solve these type of problems. You have to be careful here. You can't just make up stuff or say things that you cannot back up. Expect that once you answer this question, the interviewer is going to ask you more details about it. So if you improved caching in the app to improve performance, you better be sure that you're going to get asked how you did it in more detail. So be able to answer those. But again, with enough preparation, this should be fairly easy to you. As a side note, if this problem happened to be with maybe a teammate or your work team wasn't performing well, don't be negative. Again, never place blame on clients or coworkers or bosses. Just simply state the problem and say how you helped solve it. People don't really want to work with complainers. They want to work with people that just get to work, solve problems, and move on. Keep in mind, don't be robotic when answering questions. Be human. And a good way to think about this is if you saw yourself on TV answering this question, will you like yourself? And that's really it. So go out there, have this question prepared because you're for sure going to get asked this question. I'll see you in the next video. Okay, I lied. There's one last thing, and that is you're going to get a variation of this question, such as tell me about an interesting project you've worked on. And they're very similar. The goal here is to talk about an impressive project to wow the interviewer and tell them how, A, you're different because you're building these interesting things, but also how you've worked with what the company is looking for in the past. So you've worked with JavaScript, you've worked with C#, you've worked with C++. Whenever you're talking about a project, about a problem you solved, you always want to bring it back to what the company right now is looking for. Because at the end of the day, that's what they care about. They care about, can you solve the problems? So again, make sure you stand out and make sure you're related to the job. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. All right, we're on a roll here, so let's just keep going through a few more questions here. What is your biggest weakness? How would you answer this? Well, here's the thing. With these questions, you better not give something silly like, I work too hard, or my biggest weakness is that I care too much about my coworkers. First of all, people can really see through that and label you as fake or a liar. But again, every question should be something that makes you stand out, that makes the interviewer say, wow, I want to work with this person. So how can we twist this around to something that the interviewer is going to say, yep, this person should be hired for this company? It's very simple here. One is you need a real answer. Again, no silly answers of how great you are. Be honest. Say something that you have as a real weakness, but the key is you have to show how you overcame it, how you improved it. So don't say, I'm too passionate. Maybe say something along the lines of, sometimes when there's a problem, I get straight into coding without really thinking about the problem. And as I'm typing, I realized that perhaps I should have waited, planned out how I should write my code, how it should be structured, what problem am I really solving before I start just coding it. So lately, I've taken the time to make sure that I write pseudocode first, just commenting out the steps that I want to take, what my assumptions are, what my inputs are, and from there, write out the steps that I want my code to take before I actually dive into code. You see what I did there? I talked about my weakness, but somehow I turned it around to something that makes me a great candidate. Somebody that has improved from their past mistakes and now is working in a way that's ideal for a developer. That's it. There's not much to say here. Just be honest, but use this question as a way to, again, show how you're better than the rest, how you're a great candidate. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Do you have any question for me or for us? A question that always gets asked at the end of the interview. Once again, we should be prepared. What should we ask them? As always, the key here is to stand out. You want to make sure that these questions demonstrate how you're really interested in the company and how you've thought well about why you want to work here. The key points here are to focus on the interviewer. So use the word you, not I. You can perhaps say, I had a really good time at this interview. I do have a few questions for you. And then direct that attention to them. Because interviewers are humans too. And as humans, we like talking about ourselves. If throughout the entire interview, all they did was ask questions and all you did was answer questions, they're probably bored out of their mind, or at least not having as much time as if they also got a chance to talk about themselves. So use that to your advantage. And ideally, if you're able to mention something that they mentioned throughout the interview, that also shows that you're paying attention and that you care, which is a big bonus. Listen to what they say about themselves at the beginning or during the interview, and bring it up later in the interview towards the end so that the question is tailored to them. Use their name and use what you know about them to ask a specific question. What are some of these questions that you should ask? Here are a couple of list of questions that I personally really like and I think are good questions to ask. And you only need to ask maybe 1, 2, or 3 questions, but you can pick your favorite. So here goes a couple of these. 1, what is the greatest mistake you made in the first month of the job? And what did you do? Again, you're interviewing them, but this allows them to talk about themselves. The second one, where do you see this company going in the next 3 years, next 5 years? I want to be here for a while, but you work here and you have better knowledge of the company than I do, and I would like to see where the company is headed. Again, a great question to show that you want to be here long term. But you also get to find out about long-term plans of the company. Why did you join this company? Again, ask them why they're here. Have you seen your skills grow in the past year? Another question is to perhaps ask them the one time that they messed up at the job and how it was handled by the company. And then finally, my favorite question, what they wish somebody told them when they just started the job at this company. That way they get to talk about their experience, and that way you also get to find out how the first week of the job will be. Now, all these questions are targeted towards the interviewer, but it shows that you actually care and that you have genuine questions and you're not just here to land a job to make money and that's it. Again, it makes you more human, less of a robot. It's really going to create a better bond with your interviewer. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. So you've nailed your interview up until now. Everything's going well. The coding went well. Some of the questions that they asked, you were prepared for. You told your hero stories. Everything feels good. Or sometimes things don't work out as expected, and maybe you didn't do that well in your coding questions. Or they asked you a question that you weren't expecting in the non-technical questions. Well, never give up, first of all, because it's very rare that you have a perfect interview. Remember, you're not competing against 100% test score. You're competing against other candidates. Other candidates get asked questions too. There are ways that you can improve those odds and make sure that you still stand out, even if perhaps you didn't ace everything. And here I want to list out some of my, what I call secret weapons. Yes, a bit of a exaggerated name, but I think if you're able to work these into conversations, into questions, I think it will improve your chances of landing that job. Because what I'm about to show you are problems that I've noticed a lot in the workplace when it comes to programmers. There are a ton of really great programmers, but amongst them, there's always things that are common, that are problematic, perhaps not for us programmers, but for managers, bosses, CEOs. And by avoiding these common pitfalls, you can stand out and show that you're not a typical developer. So let's go over some of them. The first one is simplicity over complexity. It's very easy as a programmer to get into our own heads and complicate things and come up with really interesting solutions to problems that perhaps only we understand, or perhaps that only few smart coders might understand. But remember, code and problem solving is about solving problems for others. And as we know, Code has to be maintainable, readable. You want to demonstrate that you're the type of programmer that emphasizes simplicity over complexity. Work that into your conversation. Work how when you worked on a project with team members, you wanted to make sure that the code was readable, that you didn't overcomplicate the problem just to appear smart or clever. Instead, you focused on readable code because you understood that working in a team means making sure that the code is readable and maintainable long after you've written it. This is a great thing to point out in an interview because it's rare for somebody to understand this with only a few years of experience. This is something that a lot of senior developers know, or senior programmers know. The next one is a famous quote that a lot of people must have heard by now. Premature optimization is the root of all evil. We always try to optimize our code, optimize performance, see what we can do better. But you have to work with your limited time. That is, based on how much time I have now, how many resources I have now. Is making a 1% improvement in performance worth it? If you're able to demonstrate to the interviewer that you're the type of person that understands the value of time and resources and money, and how you're able to work on things that matter, such as performance, which is a big one, without getting too obsessed with it, that's a good thing. And again, something that a lot of senior developers and programmers know. The next one is kind of related. You want to focus on overall goal and not be myopic. Now, what does myopic mean? Myopic means you're just very narrowly focused on one thing. So we get tasked with a problem, and all we care about is solving that problem. And we start to ignore some other things that might be important to the project. For example, a client might have a deadline that needs a product out the door and finished in a week. But you as a programmer focus on really good code, a really good performance. You ignore that request for 1 week and instead focus on really, really good code. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to understand the business consequences of what we do. And when you're working at a company or for yourself or freelancing, you want to look at the overall goal and not just focus on what you think is important. You have to understand what the needs are of the project and work with them. And again, if you're able to demonstrate this and work this into the conversation, such as saying something like, a client requested that we deliver a product before their big conference. I knew that that was a very important thing, so I set up a meeting with my team to make sure that that was our number one priority and that we could always refactor code. And we actually dedicated time after the conference for a week where we refactor our code. But we made sure that the very first thing we did was to make sure that we're able to meet the deadline that the client wants, because the client provides the overall goal of the project. And a happy client means that we're able to continue working with them. Again, showing that you're not a typical developer that just gets given a task and that's all you focus on, that you understand the overall needs of your tasks. This is another very common one, especially amongst programmers like us, where we tend to like to complain about clients, ugly code, maybe coworkers that can get frustrating. First of all, that usually never helps, but it also creates a very toxic environment at the workplace. Nobody wants to work with somebody that complains all the time, that creates this negative energy. And if you're able to talk to your interviewer and how you're the type of person that is comfortable working with clients and that you don't like complaining or being negative about coworkers or bosses, well, that immediately makes you stand out because you're a pleasant person to work with. And that's a hard thing to put into a conversation in an interview, but there are ways of doing it, such as your past experiences where you may have demonstrated these values. And then finally, this is a big one, no ego. When we write code or when we program, when we solve problems, we take pride in our work. And when we submit something like a pull request or somebody checks our code and they make comments to it, we might feel a little bit hurt by these comments because we feel that we're not perfect, that we made mistakes. And a lot of tension can form in workplaces when this happens. It is a big problem for companies. But if you're the type of coder that likes getting feedback, that takes constructive criticism, and understands that there's no ego here, we work as a team, there's no individual, and that the overall goal of the company or project is what matters, and you're able to demonstrate that, that immediately is a big sell, or it makes you a very valuable developer. And if you're able to do these things all over here, that makes you really stand out. I can speak from experiences when hiring developers and working at some big companies that these are really rare. Having a developer that understands these and is comfortable with these points is very, very valuable. And you mostly only see these with senior developers. So this is your secret weapon. If you're able to work these into conversation, it's going to really give you those extra points with the interviewer. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Whew, you just finished the interview. It's all over, all that preparation, all that work that went into it. It's finally done. These are the final seconds of the interview. What do you do? Well, first off, you want to thank your recruiter or the interviewer, and you want to sound excited. Hopefully this won't be hard. You're actually excited about the job. But you made a good first impression when you walked into the door, and you also want to end on a good impression at the end too. Be very positive, be very energetic, and thank them for their time. If you're able to, you can also ask for specific feedback on your interview performance. Usually they won't say, but that never hurts to ask either. And you also want to ask them when you should expect to hear back from them, so that you have some sort of a timeline of when the decision is going to be made, whether to give you the job or to do another interview. Now, at the end of the interview, I like to prepare something called a closing statement. Most people get intimidated by interviews, and especially technical ones. However, the first and last impression are what most interviewers remember. So, at the end of the interview, no matter how well the interview has gone, whether you think you're not going to get the job or whether you aced it, you want to conclude with something that touches on all of these points. That is, you want to make a statement that doesn't use the word I, so you don't keep talking about yourself. You want to talk about the interviewer. You want to express how you're the ideal candidate, the best candidate for the job, but doing so without bragging. So what does that mean? Here's an example of what I would say if it was the end of the interview, and I want to essentially end off the interview on a good note. Thank you for your time. I'm sure you have lots of candidates to see, but I want to say one last thing. There are no shortages of developers for you to interview. However, there is a shortage of good, talented, egoless developers with ambition to learn. It's not the ones that are unable to admit that they are wrong. The best developers aren't the ones that know the language inside and out, at the expense of having blinders. It is not the ones who are unable to admit they are wrong. I'm not the most experienced developer that you may interview today. But the one thing that you can guarantee is that there is nobody that you will interview that will work as hard to develop his or her skill every day, play nicely with all the other developers at the company, and isn't so narrow-minded in problem solving that he or she isn't willing to try new and novel ideas. When you hire me, you will rest assured that you won't have to micromanage me. You don't have to extinguish fires. And in 1 year, I'll be one of your most valuable employees. I can guarantee that. I'm at a point in my career where I want to be surrounded by a team that I can grow with and be surrounded by smart people like yourself. And I've chosen this company specific for that reason. And you've probably had similar experiences in your career where one company allowed you to really have an impact and propel your career. I'm at this stage now, and I hope to be part of the team with you. So thank you for your time, and I hope to hear back soon from you. All right, that was it. Now, this may sound a little intense, but who would you hire? A developer that did pretty well at an interview and blends in well with all the other interviews that the interviewer has done? Or the developer who wanted it more than any others and really showed how much they want the job? Again, this depends on your personality, but the idea is that you want to finish the interview strong. And after the interview, you want to write perhaps an email afterwards to the people that interviewed you. You can thank them. If during the interview there are technical challenges that you weren't able to answer, you can actually reply to them that you have looked at the problem and you have now found a solution. And this is something that you can probably do easily by Googling. But this shows that even if you didn't solve the specific problem that they had, you have taken the time to actually solve it now. And in this thank you email, you just don't want to sound like a robot. Just nice and short, thank them for the time, show that you're interested in the position, and that you look forward to the next step. Now, if for some reason you haven't heard back by the time the deadline has passed, just message them again and let them know that you're waiting for a reply and will need to make a decision soon since you're interviewing at other companies. But wanted to make sure that you don't make a decision without knowing the situation at this company, since you really enjoyed the interview process here. And this is a bit of a psychological technique that we're going to talk about in the negotiation and offer section. But that's a nice thing to say in case you're just waiting around for an offer. Because remember, the more time you wait, the more people they're going to interview. So think about that. All right, now it's just a waiting game. Good job on the interview, and hopefully everything went well. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. All right, and that's it for the interviewing and the non-technical questions. I know it's not the most exciting section. It's a lot of me just talking, but I hope you see a pattern here. Once you learn this, it becomes easy because you can use this technique over and over and over throughout your career at whatever interviews you want. That's the beauty of non-technical questions. They're generally the same and they'll stay the same for many more years to come. So once you become good at them, then you're all set. But let's just do a quick review of what we've learned. We first learned that you want to have a good mindset when going into an interview. You want to be confident, you want to be relaxed. You also want to realize you're using the interviewer's time. So don't make this a boring meeting for them. Bring the energy and have a two-way conversation with them. They don't want to be sitting with a scared, worried, timid interviewer with low energy that is quiet. Have conversation, be human, don't be a robot, and interact with the interviewer. In psychology, there's something called primacy effect. And that is, we remember the first and last impressions best. So when you enter the room, be energetic, be excited, make a good impression. And when you leave the interview, in the final minutes, also end on a strong note. Have a strong closing argument of why they should hire you. And keep in mind that we always want to have our 4 heroes, stories that include these 4 heroes in our answers. Because this is what interviewers are looking for. And keep in mind, just because you feel like you're having a bad interview, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get the job. You're not competing against the right answer. You're competing against other candidates who may struggle throughout the interview just like you. I also want to show you a neat little tool that may come in handy for you. This is a website that we're going to talk about in the offer and negotiation section, Glassdoor. And Glassdoors allow you to look at companies, what employers are saying about them. But they also have a new interviews section, where you can actually search a company and see what sort of interviews they ask. So you can use this as a way to prepare and practice if the company is listed on this website. You see, in life, success comes to those who are able to stand out and do the extra step that 99% of the people aren't willing to do. It's why you're taking the course. Most people don't practice for interviews. If we look at this in this way, we notice a big factor when interviewing. On top of working on coding questions, data structures, and algorithms that we cover in this course, you should also work on parts that don't often get attention from people. These are the non-technical questions, where people want to find out whether you can speak to people on your team. You can communicate with clients and customers and coworkers. Whether you're able to focus on prioritizing tasks and not getting stuck solving a problem. Whether you need hand-holding or you're able to be independent and solve problems on your own. Because at the end, interview process asks one big question. If I hire you, will you make my life easier? That's it. If you're able to make somebody's life easier and offer a big value, then you're going to be hired. People want to hire developers and programmers that will help their business grow and save them time. So be that candidate and be that person. I'll see you in the next section. Bye-bye.